Hey everyone, welcome to Mini Scroll, the daily internet culture podcast bringing you the biggest stories from social media, the creator economy, and the digital space every Monday through Thursday and sometimes Fridays. My name is Annabelle and I am your Wednesday Mini Tech Scroll host and also the deputy editor of the youth digital media brand Centennial World. Welcome back to Mini Tech Scroll, everyone. Lauren has already spoken about this on Monday and Tuesday, but we are rebranding our newsletter. If you want to learn more about the rebrand, Lauren spoke about it a little bit more in Monday's episode, but we also published an edition about the whole rebrand and what to expect. So please check it out. It would be much appreciated. We are really excited for what comes next with the newsletter. Other than that, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you want to support Centennial in other ways, check out the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description if you are so inclined. Okay, let's get into the content for this week. The first story today I have seen everywhere, and that is all about the T app data breach. So if you're unfamiliar with the app, I will just break it down a little bit for you. So T is a women's only app that is essentially meant to help women stay safe while dating men. It was reportedly launched in 2023, where users could essentially post pictures of the men that they matched with on dating apps or were talking to and get the quote unquote T on them. Users would essentially be able to say if they are a green flag or a red flag or any other comments they have about their experience with that specific person. In the words of the T website quote, founder Sean Cook launched T after witnessing his mother's terrifying experience with online dating, not only being catfished but unknowingly engaging with men who had criminal records. Realizing that traditional dating apps do little to protect women, Sean knew something had to change. That's why he built T, the first ever dating safety platform for women. I should note here that many articles that I've read talking about the T app note that similar kind of things do exist on a smaller scale. Many women might turn to Facebook groups or other community groups to talk about their experience or question the men that they will potentially be dating. And honestly, some type of crowdsourcing information / background checking is definitely important in this era of modern dating. But I will say, I do think an app like this can quickly devolve into cyberbullying. I never use the app, so I can't say for sure if that's what was happening on T, but I think it's just something to think about. Even though I do think something like this is definitely important for the safety of women. And obviously, I hate that an app like this even has to exist in the first place. Like I said, I haven't used the app, but according to the terms and conditions on the T website, a user has to create a username and include their location, birth date, photo, and photo ID when they start using the app. And many women had downloaded and used the app, where just a couple of days ago, it became the most downloaded app on the US Apple App Store. And while T may have started off as an attempt to keep people safe, it has ended up doing quite the opposite, where T has found itself in the middle of a pretty bad data leak. At the time of recording, there has reportedly been 2 breaches. So pulling from the T website once again, it seems that the initial breach was at 6:44 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Friday, July 25th, where they, quote, identified unauthorized access to our system. It soon became apparent that data from before February 2024 had been accessed. So according to the statement on the T website, they described what had been compromised in the breach, where it was, quote, approximately 72,000 images, including approximately 13,000 selfies and photo identification submitted by users during the account verification, and approximately 59,000 images publicly viewable in the app from posts, comments, and direct messages. But soon there were reports that these images had been downloaded and were now accessible on 4chan. So I was reading all about this breach from 404 Media. I would definitely recommend you to check them out if you're interested in tech, industry, all that kind of stuff. But Emmanuel Mayberg explained that the hackers gained access through an exposed database hosted on Google's mobile app development platform Firebase. That being said, according to everything I've seen online, this was not a sophisticated hack by any means, and it was seemingly more the fault of the platform and the security measures that they did not have in place. I've seen experts describe the security measures as downright negligent and lazy. So that is definitely not positive on behalf of the platform, and I'm sure there will be legal action coming. But earlier this week, T posted another update saying that they had recently learnt that some DMs were accessed as part of the initial incident. Because of this, they ended up taking the DM functionality down. In a follow-up article for 404 Media, the journalists Emmanuel Mayberg and Joseph Cox talk about some of the DMs that had been exposed, saying that it was possible for the hackers to see, quote, messages between users discussing abortions, cheating partners, and phone numbers they sent to one another. They also spoke to a researcher who contends that a second breach could access data from users who were joined after 2024, which is obviously the initial cut-off date that the T app had said was breached. So like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the data and images that had been exposed in the breach have ended up on 4chan, and this is obviously extremely dangerous for many reasons, but especially because what has been done with the data is that a searchable public map of T users has been created based on the IDs that had been accessed, so people can literally see information about a person where they live on this interactive map. And it is really scary because since T started gaining popularity and virality, especially in the past month, it became heavily criticized by men's rights activists and groups, where having the personal information of many T users is now falling in the hands of such men on 4chan. There have also been reports that users on 4chan are ranking the selfies of the users that they have come across in terms of attractiveness, which we hate. From a bigger picture standpoint, though, we do talk a lot on this podcast about the importance of verification and how it is becoming increasingly common online as apps introduce age restrictions and verification processes to prove that a user is not a bot. Verification is definitely important, but the T data breach shows how precarious it can be to use photo IDs and selfies like this. I think it's particularly worrisome in the era of deepfakes, where these selfies could be used in other videos. Ryan Broderick, who is definitely one of our favorite commentators, also covered the T breach in his Garbage Day newsletter, and I think he had a really good point as for what this kind of verification means for the future of the internet and surveillance. So I will read to you what he wrote now, because he honestly said it better than I ever could. Quote, monitoring one kind of user means monitoring everyone else. Proving that a user is a woman poses the same problem, with the additional thorniness of defining what a woman is. A quandary T didn't survive long enough to reckon with. But the lesson from all of this is that there is no simple solution here. Instead, we have found ourselves facing two choices: fight for the chaotic, open internet that allows anonymity and all the good and bad that comes with it, or continue to slide into an internet that feels safer but surveils our every move and will inevitably censor what we see and do, supported by massive databases of our most embarrassing and sensitive data. So I thought that was really interesting, and I'd be intrigued to hear which choice out of the ones that Ryan Broderick lays out you would prefer. My next story that I have today, though, is another one that I've been seeing quite a lot of commentary about, and that is how an AI model was included in Vogue. Not last week, but I'm pretty sure the week before, I covered a story about how an AI influencer was going viral for her post that looked like she was at Wimbledon. In the episode, I spoke about a number of things. I did go on a bit of a rant, I will say, but I did touch on what it means for the rise of AI influences and what it represents for the creator economy. But obviously, we have seen a rising number of AI influences and just AI content more broadly online over the past few years. But I will say, I feel like it has been mostly relegated to the digital world. In mainstream media, we haven't really seen a massive uptick in AI in visual content yet. I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it's just what I'm seeing, but behind the scenes, I'm sure media professionals are using it in script writing, special effects, and whatever. But I do feel like we haven't really seen the rise of slop in the same way as we have online in more mainstream forms of media and entertainment. But it seems like the seal has officially been broken. In the August edition of Vogue, a picture of an AI-generated model was included in a guest campaign, and there is obviously so much to discuss here. But first, let me kind of explain what the picture was. Obviously, if you are watching, I will insert it in the screen, but if you're listening, not to worry. So the AI-generated woman had blonde hair, light eyes, and the quote-unquote perfect model body. There was a small disclaimer indicating that the image was AI-generated, but it was very faint. So the images were created by a London-based AI marketing agency. The founders of the agency told the BBC that they managed to get the campaign after a guest co-founder reached out to them in DM. I thought this was interesting because it does seem like these calls are coming from the top. And I know this is a little bit different, but I actually included an article in our old newsletter. Once again, please subscribe, a couple weeks ago about how AI is infiltrating the media landscape. It was published once again by 404 Media. They're really getting a lot of airtime today. But the journalist noted how ironic it is that the higher ups and executives of so many of these media companies in the United States are pushing for the inclusion of AI as, the quote unquote shiny new thing, despite the fact that it is really hurting the industry, limiting creativity and critical thinking in the process. I feel like while AI models like this could be a form of creativity and art, you could make a similar argument. It also, to me, feels particularly sinister to talk about all of this in the shadow of the Sydney Sweeney Cross American Eagle campaign. Lauren covered this yesterday, where she spoke about the messaging of the campaign and how it kind of feeds into white supremacy, the turn to conservatism, culturally, and also eugenics. And the fact that this AI-generated model is also a woman who fits neatly into Eurocentric beauty standards suggests that even when there are endless possibilities to create whatever type of image woman that you want in a campaign like this one, the fashion brands once again fall into this mold. And to be honest, I don't know, call me optimistic, but I really was hoping for something different from the fashion industry, but I don't know, I probably shouldn't have got my hopes up on that one, especially because I feel like we have moved so far away from a beauty standard that kind of valued original beauty towards something where beauty equals perfection. Like the beauty standard today involves getting work done on your face or your body in one way or another, and now we have these AI models that are not even real that can further uphold these beauty standards. I cannot. Separate though from the wrongdoings of the industry at large and obviously the values it clearly upholds, these developments also just go to show how capitalism and the pursuit of profit literally shapes everything. Fashion at its core, I feel like, should be about art, creativity, like I was kind of getting at before. But now it's essentially just an ends to a mean to make money. And sure, you could say that it's always been like that, and I probably agree, but it's just so much more blatant now. Also, trying to make money by showing clothes on a person that doesn't exist, how does that even make sense? I don't understand. Once again, I feel like I've gone on another rant, but I think another thing worth discussing is that if we have the rising popularity of AI models, there is obviously issues about cutting work for real people, which is something similar to what I discussed when I was talking about the AI influencers. But also, with these AI models and influencers, they obviously pull from real life people. Like, we know AI is always pulling from something. It's not entirely original. So when they created this model, whose likeness are they even pulling from? Should this person be referenced? There are so many ethical questions here. Like, I've seen so many people commenting that the AI model in this campaign looks like Kate Hudson. But yes, that is my take on that. I feel like I just blacked out. I don't even remember anything I said. So hopefully that all made sense. Okay, to finish off today's episode, I actually have two shorter and hopefully quick stories. The first one is an update on something I covered a couple weeks ago, and that is about YouTube and the social media ban for under-16s here in Australia. As a refresher, last year, legislation was passed through Australian Parliament that would set a minimum age for social media use, including platforms like Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and X. YouTube was not initially included in that list of platforms, but maybe around a month ago, there seemed to be a push that YouTube should be included in the quote-unquote ban. And yesterday, it broke that YouTube would, in fact, be included. This is obviously a big move because while there is no denying that YouTube has problems, especially with sending viewers and young people down rabbit holes, it is obviously a major educational tool. Having said that though, I have read that YouTube Kids is expected to be exempt from the ban, so there is still some type of access there. Nevertheless, the Australian government's decision comes days after Google, which is obviously the parent company of YouTube, threatened legal action if the government decided to include the platform in the ban, despite originally exempting it. Obviously, this isn't really surprising because it makes total sense that YouTube would work really hard to stay off the ban list because it allows them to keep more users on the platform, watch more videos, and of course, make more money. Anyway, that is just a quick update for you on that. My last story for today, though, is that the Internet Archive is now being used as an archive for the government in the United States. We actually did a whole deep dive on the Internet Archive, so definitely check that out if you were interested. I found that one quite interesting. But if you haven't watched that episode, I will quickly explain what the Internet Archive is. So it's a tool that essentially lets internet users view links and digital materials that have been deleted or altered, which ultimately make them challenging to find online. It also runs the Wayback Machine, which I'm sure many of you have used over the years, but you can basically just drop a link in and it will take you to older versions of said website. Anyway, recently, the Californian Senator Alex Padilla granted the Internet Archive federal depository status, which allows it to more easily access and share government documents with the public. In a statement, Padilla said, quote, "The archive's digital-first approach makes it the perfect fit for a modern federal depository library, expanding access to federal government publications amid an increasingly digital landscape. The Internet Archive has broken down countless barriers to accessing information, and it is my honor to provide this designation to help further their mission of providing universal access to knowledge." I thought this was pretty interesting because the Internet Archive has not been without its problems over the years. For example, it's been hit by a series of lawsuits and cybersecurity issues recently. The organization has specifically faced legal issues around intellectual property and copyright. At one point, the Internet Archive was sued by 4 major book publishers who argued that scanning physical books for digital access violated copyright law in the United States. So yeah, I'm wondering if this sort of validation will end up helping the Internet Archive in the long term, especially because I do believe having some sort of archive for digital materials is really important because that is the main way we communicate these days. Mashable, the publication, also made an interesting point around this whole situation, noting that, quote, "The status is particularly notable as the Trump administration has systemically removed information from federal websites under new, quote, anti-woke executive orders." So in some ways, this designation is actually completely at odds with this kind of agenda from the government. But yeah, I'm intrigued to see what happens here. Okay, those are all my stories I have for today. I feel like that was a bit of a long one. Or maybe I'm just tired, who knows. But Lauren will speak to you tomorrow and I will chat to you next week. Once again, please remember to sign up to our newsletter. The link is in the description. Okay, thanks for listening. Bye.